Good morning, everyone. This is it's pretty informal. I know a lot of you have asked if we're going to have any handouts or if there's a PowerPoint. Any handouts that I refer to will be things that you can find within the manual or in our resource library. This is really just set up to be kind of a live walkthrough of the application process. We've never really done that. And I hope we can continue doing this every year because every year we have new changes. So the intention is to have them every year and go over the new changes, but we will continue these trainings on the first Tuesday of every month. So if you feel like you've missed something and you still need help filling out your application, we're going to have these available every month. So that's the plan right now. It's going to be a little different for some of you because we have all different kinds of institution types. I think we have some schools in here. We have some nonprofits, and I think we also have some for-profit centers, but this training is to go over the application process for all entities that have more than one site. So we may talk about some things that apply to some and others that apply to other people. So bear with us if we're talking about stuff that doesn't apply to you from time to time. All of you, hopefully you're able to log in on a separate screen. If not, just follow along. I tend to teach a lot like I talk and converse, and I go all over the place. So if I skip around and I'm not making sense or you have a question, just speak up, type in. I've got some ladies in here helping and watching the chat. So ask questions. That's what this is for. Stop me and we will answer them right on the spot. So most of you should be familiar already with logging in and how to access your application. I have set up this test account, and actually Edgar did, and it's called Test Top Hop. And when you log in, this is what your business maintenance page should look like. You should have access to your applications and then your site maintenance. For those of you that have been on longer than a year, you will remember that prior to this last year, you were able to go and enter your own sites in site maintenance. And we've had such an increase in multi-sited sponsors, we've decided to manage that in here so that we don't get sites mixed up, because it's kind of easy to get in there and mix up sites. So if you are going to be adding any new sites and you haven't done that in the last year or so, we do have a new process, and it's detailed in our resource library and in our manual how to do that. You do have to send in a form, because if you go to click on site maintenance, you'll see that you can view all your existing sites, but you can't change anything. So if you ever need to update your information in site maintenance, you'll have to contact us. And a lot of these things that are in your site maintenance is what filters and auto-populates your stuff onto your site application. So if you have information about the site that's wrong on your site application, we've got to get it corrected here first. So you should still be reviewing all your site information every year, and as it's, anytime it changes, but you have to reach out to us to get it updated. And like I said, same thing, you're not able to add new ones. So we do have forms, and I can show you real quick. We have a lot of forms. But if you need to add new sites, where is it? Right here, the add site form, cleverly named. So anyway, you'll fill out that form and send it in, and we will get the sites added for you. Go back to our application. Also, before I get too far into it, I want to explain some not new requirements, but things that we're going to be more strictly enforcing. Number one, because our state auditors are requiring more and more documentation to be on file in our office, but also because we have such an increased number of institutions that are bringing on sites that are operating not normally like they would because of COVID. So basically, to be on the CACFP, per USDA, you have to be a licensed facility. We have to follow state and local laws. concerning licensing. And in Oklahoma, if you care for children more than 15 hours in a week, you have to be licensed by DHS or fall into one of their exemptions, which there are many, which allow you to operate under those exemptions. It is our requirement that you get that approval from DHS that your program does fall within one of their many exemptions, and we're supposed to have that documentation available at any time. We are now requiring that documentation to be submitted before we'll approve your sites for 2021. So like I said, this isn't a new requirement. This is something you should have been doing prior to putting your sites on and operating there. It's just something that will be requiring you to submit along with your application this year. And like I said, I've got a little packet. If you're not familiar with how to do that, later on today, it's not there yet because I wanted to have this training first to explain what it is before we just started putting new forms in Resource Library. But there will be some forms on there and instructions on how you can reach out to licensing and what exactly to do to get that approval. Because I know we have many sites that operate at risk or boys and girls clubs or things like that, that you have to be approved. You don't have the site maintenance tab. So if you don't have the site maintenance tab, then you're going to be single-sided. And although we are going to talk about some at-risk stuff because many of our multi-sided are at risk. You can stay on if you want. There'll be some things that we're gonna talk about that will not pertain to you if you're single-sided. We do have a training set up just for our at-risk single-sided programs on September 23rd, if you would like to participate in that as well. Also, if something, sorry. You're welcome. As far as your DUNS, if you're not seeing your DUNS expiration, I don't know, you're not seeing it on my screen because I don't have it entered in there. It's not there. This is just a fake page. But if you're not seeing it on yours later on today, you can contact the person assigned your application and we can help you with that. I lost my total train of thought. Okay, so new sites. Another new thing, well, it's not new, but we are requiring the documentation. And we don't have many that fall into this category, but I still want to let you guys know and be aware that if you are going to be operating any of your sites that are not affiliated with your institution, so schools, if you're operating at risk at all your sites, those are all affiliated. If you're an at-risk and you have a partnership with Boys and Girls Clubs and you're using facilities that have already got that relationship with the Boys and Girls Club, that's affiliated. But if you're just a nonprofit institution that's using someone's space to conduct the program and whatever your enrichment program is, those are what we're considering unaffiliated. And there is a side agreement that should be in place. And that should have been done anyway, but we've created a formal one that you will have to complete those as well. So if I have not contacted you about needing a side agreement, then you're not one of those and you don't need it. So you don't need to worry about it. There's very few, but I wanted to explain that. Okay, so any questions on sites and what you guys need before you're approved for the new year as far as approval from DHS goes? I'll put those forms and the instructions on Resource Library later today after this training, but you're also welcome to reach out to me if you need help. You should always know that anything on this page that you can edit yourself, like, you know, you can type in it, you can edit it. All of this should be updated when it changes. It's very important that you do that. If we're going to be sending you anything, and when we do send you things, it's going to go to your mailing address. Obviously, this is the address where we can find you. So that's important for your consultant to know. And then also where your records are kept, that should be kept up to date. When your consultant goes to this address, they should be able to access your files there at all times. So many of you, it's going to be all the same addresses. But if it ever were to change, make sure that you're updating that. I know we've had some cases, especially during COVID, where you guys are maybe operating really weird, unusual hours, or you might be not working at your offices anymore or something if you work at an agency. And if you need to change your mailing address so we can get correspondence to you in the right place, you can change it today and you can change it tomorrow. Update it as much as you need to so we have the most current information. Another thing that we have a lot of trouble with, it seems like, is making sure we have the right email addresses on file for you guys. We send out a lot of information that's really important that you need access to, and it's going to the email listed right here, but it's also going to the email that you provided when you first sent us your certificate of authority and got a user account. So if at any point your email address has changed, or even if it hasn't and you're not getting our emails and you have a user account, something's wrong with your email address. So we need to take a look at it. Also too, I think make sure you're updating this correctly. Your fiscal year, what we're asking for here is what your institution's fiscal year is. So what is your business fiscal year? What do you operate on? Our fiscal year, as far as the food program is concerned, operates on the federal fiscal year, which is October to September. But we want to know what your program, what you consider a fiscal year. So make sure this comes from, if you've never changed this, it was what you put in there, or whoever put it in there when you guys first applied. So make sure that's the right thing. Okay, so that's pretty much it on our business maintenance page. I'm going to go into the application. And like I said, right now I have this set up for a for-profit entity. And for the most part, all of the forms are exactly the same. We just might have some different documentation that's required for nonprofits. But everyone has to fill out this list of forms. The first one is our application questionnaire. This form really has not changed at all in quite some time. It's basically just asking you about if you've participated in the programs before. If you have renewed an application, you know there are many of these things on every form that rolls forward and auto-populates for you. And that's to help you not have, it's not so cumbersome every year, but you still need to be reviewing it. And one thing that we notice a lot, when you first participate, this question would be marked no if you've never done it. But then next year it's going to roll forward marked no. But if you're renewing your application, it should be yes, because you did it last year. So make sure you're answering this appropriately. If you're a nonprofit that does summer, or if you're a school that also does school and breakfast programs, make sure you're marking those appropriately, because we really need to have the most accurate information. These other questions have to do if you've ever been terminated or if you owe money, and those should be no, or you do not qualify. And chances are you wouldn't be applying again anyhow. What section? This is the first form on the checklist within your application. Application questionnaire. And generally, after you renew from year to year, this information is really never going to change much. Just the main one we want to make sure you're marking is that you're participating, what you're participating in. I'm going to come back to the sponsor application because that one is pretty long. I'm going to go over all these other small ones first. The other form that's required for all of our entities is the funds received form. The total CACFP funds received, we're looking at our fiscal year, meaning October to September. And if you're completing this right now, we understand that we're not through September of this year. We want the prior year. So you're filling out the 21 application. We want all what you were paid in 20. We're not quite done with 20, and we get that. So what you should list here is everything that you've received from October up until now. And that will be suffice. What we're looking for here is any other federal funds that you receive. So this would be Title 20, whatever the title is, contract for adults, is that 11 or am I making that up? Any kind of the Title 20 is, you know, your DHS subsidy contracts, tribal money, if your school, your Title 1, or there's all kinds of federal, 2, 6, 10, any other funding you get, federal money needs to go here. In the event that, and I should reiterate though, on this one, it's asking, you can report what your institution fiscal year is, not necessarily October to September. And that's why that's important, what I said, to make sure you report the right fiscal year on your business maintenance page, because within 10 months of the end of your fiscal, or 9 months within the end of your fiscal year, you should have an audit done, an organizational-wide audit done, if you've received $750,000 or more in federal funds. And that's an organizational-wide audit. That's an outside audit. This is not referring to what we do. This is not your food program audit. So if you receive more than $750,000 a year in a combined of all the federal funds you receive, you have to have an organizational-wide audit, and you have to put a date here. Yes, DHS funds should go there too. Yes, all federal funds. Yes, anything, any federal dollars, that would include Head Start grants, all of that. A lot of times though, we have institutions that maybe don't go over that $750,000, and then they still put in a date here because they think it's referring to when we come out. If these two numbers don't add up to be $750,000 or more, you do not need to put a date here. If you put a date here, then after all our applications are approved and we get further on into the year, Becky Gray, who's responsible for getting all these audits, if you're telling us you've had an audit, she's going to reach out to you and say, we need that audit. So if you are not required to do an organizational-wide audit, you don't need a date here. Any other questions on this form? Okay. Mill policy statement, there's really nothing to do on this page other than you have to agree to it. So just read it and agree and submit it. Your civil rights assurance and compliance review. If you were on last year, you remember that we made some changes to this form and it was kind of a mess. And I think this year we've made it much easier because, as you know, you all have to have civil rights training every year in addition to the other training you're required to have to be on the CACFP. Last year we asked you, number 5 listed, there was like 4 or 5 boxes, and we asked you to list the people and the place and the topics, and we realized that wasn't working. So we have made another change on this form that number 5 now basically just states that you, by checking the box, you've had your training and that you understand that everyone, all your key staff have to have that training, and that you need to maintain that documentation and all your certificates on file because your consultants will look for that during a review. Just like they'll be asking for your other annual training information. So I think this will be a lot easier. It really held up a lot of people, but make sure that if you haven't really had your civil rights training, go and do it first before you say that. We've got to make sure you guys are doing it. If you don't know how to do your training, it is on the resource library. It wouldn't take you very long at all, but you can go right here and it gives you step-by-step instructions on where to find that, and you'll go through it and get your certificate. But we do not need you to submit that certificate to us like we did last year. You'll just maintain it on file. So that was the main change that we had on this form. Like I said, this is another form that the answers from last year will roll forward, but make sure they still apply with how you're operating. 6 and 7, we added these questions last year. Make sure you're putting something here, even if it is only English, and if there's no other need or no other language spoken. And this is a requirement by USDA that we make sure we're providing all of our things in the appropriate languages. We didn't really have any other responses last year, I think, other than English or Spanish, but there's the potential. So make sure you're filling out 6 and 7 to let us know what your needs are. Any questions on this form? Okay. Public release. Everyone has to do a public release. However, I need to go back and say something. On the civil rights training, because I know we have some schools in here, if you did the school version, the NSLP version of that training, we will honor it in CACFP. You don't have to do it twice. Okay, back to the public release. So everyone has to do the public release, but you don't, if you're a renewing entity, you do not have to actually submit one. Your schools, you guys have to print one and do it every year. But the exception with CACFP is when you're doing your renewal application, and you won't see it on this form right now because this is a test one, so this has never really been a real participant. But after the next year when you renew, you'll have a box that, isn't it towards the top, Lisa? Right above here, okay. That it will appear, and you can check it and just say you're gonna opt into the statewide release or something to that effect. And after all our applications are approved and renewed at the end of normally November-ish, December, we print a huge big list and we do the public release. So you are not required to do this every year, but you can. But make sure if whatever you had in the year before rolls forward, delete it out because we don't need all that old stuff there. But if you don't want to have to, and you guys know if you do a public release, you're not required to pay for it. All you can do is submit it and ask them to do it. And if they run it, great. If not, that's fine too. All we ask is that you send it where it needs to go. But for CACFP, when you renew, you can click that box and say, sure, release my information, and you're good and you can move on. But you would still need to click that box and submit the completed form so that we know you're opting into it. So that one's pretty easy. The state agency and institution agreement. This one is a form that's approved from the beginning of your participation, and it's a permanent agreement. But it is an ever-changing agreement. Every year we make updates. If we have new changes to our policies or things like that, we got to make a new policy, we do change it. And so it's important that every year you're reading it, and if not, maybe making a print of it, because like I said, it's a living document. So when we change it, every version of it changes. But when you first come on, you're agreeing to always, abide by those policies and procedures. So we always try to highlight any changes we make when we don't implement typically changes mid-year. We try to hold off and do it in the beginning of the year. And if you haven't already received your manual in the mail, you should be receiving it soon. And there is a sheet in there, and it's also on your resource library right here, manual update. So anything new we add or some new policy or procedure that we've changed going into a new year, we'll pull them out and put them in a separate sheet. But make sure you're reading it because it does change and you are agreeing to all those terms and conditions. But the whole point of that was you don't have to do anything. It rolls forward, approved, submitted, and we reapprove it every year. Owners and board members. This is the one that will be a little different depending on what type of entity you are. If you are a for-profit entity and you're not incorporated, you don't have a board. We just need to know your owners. We need to know who owns your business. And we've added this year a co-owner because we know that especially our larger entities might have more than one owner. So make sure you're listing all the applicable people as the owners. Now, if you're a private nonprofit, and an incorporated entity, you'll fill out the board section. So all of our schools, all of our nonprofits, you guys are all going to be filling out this section. If you're a school, you do not have an owner. So make sure you're not putting anyone there. And if you do, we're just deleting it because there's no owner of the school. You guys only have a board. And make sure you're listing everyone and make sure you're updating it every year. It won't let you save it if you don't have all the required information, which specifically is the name, obviously, and the birth date and what their positions are. And on your board, you can't have more than 49% that receives compensation or that you're related to either by blood or marriage. So just make sure that you understand that. Any questions on this page? Okay. Disclosure of lobbying activities. We may actually have only one in a blue moon that will ever really fill out this form. But if your agency or institution or what have you ever does any type of lobbying, you have to report it on this form. Like I said, 99.99% of our participants do not do that, but you still have to submit the form to show that you did not. So most of you are just going to fill out this part and submit it and move on. Okay. Do we have any adult sponsors in here, adult care sponsors? I don't think we did. Oh, okay. So as you know that if you're an adult daycare program, you have to fill out the adult questionnaire, and this form is available just like the at-risk one. It's available to anyone, meaning you can click on it and fill it out. But if you're not an adult program, you really don't need to fill it out. And some people, sometimes I think they're not sure what it is, so they just fill it out anyhow. But if you're not operating an adult daycare program, this form is not for you. And basically, nothing about this has changed. You have to answer them appropriately to know that you're providing the right activities and programs to participate in. You wouldn't be renewing if you didn't. So my one suggestion though on this form and then the at-risk one that we're going to look at next is to be as detailed as you can as possible. That's helpful for our consultants in both of these situations because you have to provide certain types of activities to be on the programs. And so when our consultants walk into your establishment, we need to know what we're looking for. Like with the at-risk, if you're an at-risk program, you got to fill out this questionnaire now. Last year we did that on paper because we added it too late, and so we couldn't get it in the system. But what you're seeing here is the exact thing that we did on paper. The only difference is before we were having you do them per site, but now you're just doing one for all of your sites. But make sure that there are some questions that you might have different responses for the different sites. Yes, it's being recorded and we can provide it to you later. But make sure you're being as detailed as possible. And like I said, if one question has a different response for different sites, make sure you're detailing that out, especially your education and enrichment program. Because many of you, especially a lot of you that maybe your schools have the same programs, you guys are all doing some type of tutoring or something like that, but maybe your at-risk sponsors, you guys have stuff all across the board. You might have boys and girls clubs, you might have, I don't know, all kinds of different things. So list out, the different types of programs so that we know you're providing the right educational or enrichment program. The last question is important because we do get this question a lot about that schools call and say, we want to feed the football team. That's great. You can feed the football team, but it has to be part of a bigger program that includes all your children, basically. You can't just have the at-risk program to feed your athletic programs. So that's one confusion that we get a lot. So if you're going to be doing something like that, you need to have some type of tutoring or some type of enrichment educational program that your football team or your softball team or what have you can come and get a meal, and you offer the program to them. All the children don't necessarily have to always participate, but it has to be available. And the way we want you to respond on this form and everything in your application right now is how you would normally operate non-COVID. We don't know when it will be non-COVID, and we don't know when it will go back to normal, but we can only hope it will be by the end of next September. Lord help us all if it's not. But we want you to tell us what's going to happen on a normal non-COVID situation. If you're, a lot of you guys that are doing at risk, and if you're serving off-site, you know, you're making accommodations to do that enrichment a different way. We don't want that recorded here. We have waivers in place that you need to apply for and document it on there, and I can kind of talk more about that before we get off of here. But we want all of these forms to reflect how you would operate in a normal situation. You don't see the at-risk questionnaire. Maybe it doesn't show up for everyone then. I don't know. Who are you with? Do you mind telling me? Greg? Oh, are you guys family daycare home? Yeah. Okay, so it doesn't show up for our family daycare home type. So this totally doesn't apply to family daycare homes. I didn't even think about it. We'd have some family daycare homes in here. Sorry, guys. I forgot about y'all. Yeah, no worries. So anyway, report on here what we would like to happen if life was normal, and then we'll get the stuff for COVID on a different form later. Any questions on your at-risk questionnaire? This is required. If any of your sites are checked as at risk and you don't have this filled out, it will not let you submit your application. So, okay, so I'm going to go back up here to our sponsor application. And this is probably the form we find. This and the application for participation for your sites is where it's got most of our pertinent, important information, and probably where we see most of the mistakes. A lot of things roll forward, but you're going to see in what you're looking here on my screen, because I have a test one and it's not been completed, a lot of it's blank. But with everything, like I've said, I know I've said it more than once, review everything that's in here. Make sure you have a purpose or mission statement of organization listed. You have to have some type of something here. We've found some where if we actually read them, they don't make sense. And we came across one time that just had an X in it. So don't just put something so that it will save. We need to know really what your purpose is. And it doesn't have to be, you know, a long drawn out. Just tell us what you're doing. Most of you are not going to be operating in any other state, but we might have some nationwide daycare groups that do, but most of you will say no. But if you do, you know, if you're I don't know, what's some La Petite, are they nationwide? You know, Child Time, you're going to want to list out the states that you're in. This section here for new applicants only, don't need to worry about that because you guys are all renewing. This section is going to be the number of facilities that you currently have. But keep in mind, you know, you're reporting how many you have right now, but then your budget and things like that are all a projection. So in some places we ask you to report actual numbers, but then when we're talking dollars, we're asking you to make a projection, and we know it's confusing. We're hoping that our budget and this form will be something that we can make better and change for next year. I am on the sponsor application for participation. I jumped back up to the second one. So most of you, none of you will say, emergency shelters. We only have one of those in the state, and none of those I don't think are any of you right now. Child care centers, obviously those are your licensed child care facilities. Adult centers, same thing. Most of you, all our schools and nonprofits are going to be listed in your at-risk sites. And we also have something, and I'll probably talk about it again later, that is often confused. People report that they are an outside school hours center, but I don't think a lot of folks understand really what that means. Just because you provide before or after school care doesn't mean you do outside school hours center. An outside school hours center would be a center that operates only when school is out, like for spring break, or if you're a school district that operates only 4 days a week, but you offer child care on that 5th day for parents that don't have anywhere for their children to go, you know, and you keep those kids there, that would be outside of school hours. You are adding a new center, and you're already multi-sited. I would go ahead, if you're projecting to be open next week, you need to go ahead and get it sent, because typically when you add a new site, it's going to take at least a month to get it approved, because we have changed that process. So you're going to send us the forms, we'll enter the site, and then you have to go complete your site application that we'll look at next. And from the time that your online application has been approved by our office, your consultant then has to come out and do an approval visit. And that's something that we started maybe year before last. Is that right, Lisa? Yeah. And from the time that application is approved, your consultant has 30 days to come out and do that approval visit. So get it to us right away so we can get you approved. You are welcome. Okay. Some of the things we ask are redundant, because this asks, again, your total federal funds. We ask how much you receive, and now we're asking how much you spent, and then you have to report that again on, you know, in your budget. So it all should be kind of congruent. And your budget, like I said, is a projection of what last year. And we always kind of say you want to look at what you spent last year and increase what you're putting down here by 10 or 15% or what have you. But anyway, this is what you've spent. That's what it's asking here. If these are wrong, your fiscal year, you can't change that. That goes back to your business maintenance page. So make sure you've got the right fiscal year for your business listed there, and it will fix this here. This here talks about the affiliated sites and unaffiliated sites, like what I was referring to earlier. Most of you are all affiliated. If you've not been contacted by me personally and told that you weren't, then you don't need to worry about it. So if you are one of those that I've contacted and told you that we consider your sites unaffiliated, you need to say no here. And because just because they're with your sponsorship and you've got them signed up under you, that doesn't make you affiliated. And so for our nonprofit unaffiliated sites, you also have to show proof that those sites are nonprofit as well. So you will have to obtain their 501c3 and submit that as well. Do you have a question, Justine? You might have to type it. No, if you start serving prior to approval, you cannot claim those meals. Your consultant will give you the effective date when they come out, And generally, we do not backdate anything. That's per USDA. That's regulatory. You're welcome. Oh, okay, no worries. Okay, number 12, you guys, you have to say they'll be served. If you do, then you don't qualify. You have to say yes here. The most tricky part, or the most confusing part of this whole application for sponsors is going to be your budget. And I will admit that it's not the greatest setup, and it is confusing, especially for our schools and our really large institutions where you have, say, a food bank of some sort or a large school district. It's asking for your entire institution budget, and that throws people off. We don't necessarily need to know your entire school budget. Like, I know we've got regional food bank on here, so we don't need to know all a regional food bank's budget. That would be impossible. Or if you're military, like, that would be really impossible. That's like, we're talking more zeros than those boxes can fit. Your institution, and what we're asking for is your program on CACFP. So we're just talking, if you're a multi-program agency, we're just talking about your CACFP institution. And everyone should have an amount of money that it costs you to run that program. You may not use the money that you get from CACFP to go towards any of those costs, but it still costs you money to run the program, and we need to know that. Because the point of this is to ensure that you are financially viable and administratively capable. And financially viable means, you know, are you able to run this program without the reimbursement? And sometimes that's hard. That's hard for programs, especially right now, and we understand that. But when it comes down to it, the purpose of this program is to be a reimbursement for meals you're already providing. So you should be able to operate this program without the reimbursement, and we need to be able to see that. So that's the purpose of the budget. We don't need to know anything more than what it costs to operate. So with that said, each one of these schedules open up, and you should be reporting within them everything that pertains to it. So if you have an accountant, and then you have the person who does the paperwork or what have you, this part up here for your administrative budget and your administrative labor, all this is just for those folks who do that administrative work. We're not talking about the people that cut the carrots and sack the lunches. That goes down in your operational cost. This top section of your administrative, called the administrative budget, is just for those that what it costs to operate the administrative part of your program. So, like I said, it doesn't mean that you're going to use the money or you're going to be reimbursed for what you put in here. It's just, we need to know what it costs to run the program. And when you go in here to add these items, it is confusing. You will add the person's name and their position, and then you're going to fill out the total hours that they, and we just recently kind of got this fixed. We had a bug where it wouldn't let you put 0 hours on the CACFP side. So you know the total hours that a person works in a year. How many of those hours, if they do more than one job, I mean, if their sole job is CACFP, you're going to put 100% of their yearly hours on column 3. But if they have other jobs and other hats within your agency, you're going to put those hours here, and then you're going to put how many hours they're using, you know, per year to do the CACFP work. And then that will determine a percentage of what the allowable cost of their annual salary is. Truly, and some of this is hard because, like, for our tribes, I was working with one the other day that she's like, we really don't use any of your money. We still want you to report what you're paying those people to do the job. It still may come out that the portions are all 0 and that we approve 0, but we still need to know what those amounts are. Some of the things that we look for Our family daycare homes are going to be the ones, they operate a little bit different, and they're going to, most of these schedules are going to be filled out for them. Which area to put food management costs? That is in the next section under operational, and we're getting there. A lot of you may not even have things, you know, if you're not buying office equipment or things like that, and you may not, you know, but you might have printing costs if you're printing all our reports and things like that. You might have postage costs if you're mailing stuff to your sites. You guys, you know, right now you're all on some form of device that has electricity and internet. That's a cost to your program that is because of CACFP. You can put those in your budget, and you should, but that doesn't necessarily mean you'll use our monies to pay for it. And sometimes, depending on how it works, you know, you guys may not even have enough money at the end of the day to pay for it. Right. And so what we have seen a lot is that we're just letting things roll forward from year to year, and it's not being updated. If you've still got what you had in your budget from 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, there's no way that's still accurate. It might be close, but we need you guys to be, like I said earlier, looking at what last year was like and increasing it a little bit, because your budget's a projection. It's not an exact amount of what you spent, and it's never the way this is designed. And if you've gone in here and filled these schedules out, and if you're picky like I am, I know when I used to be on your side of the fence, okay? And so I knew at my agency I had an exact down to the penny amount of money I had for materials. It's really hard to get those amounts to fit in there because it's just not set up that way. You're putting it, it's really asking you, when you go to put in your materials, the instructions, I keep clicking the wrong one. No, I'm not. Oh, right here. So like, it's asking you to put it down to like the paper and pens and pencils. No, you guys don't have to do that. You can just lump it together as office supplies. You don't have to be that picky. Should we have any information in the CMP column? You mean this one over here? The CMP approved? Is that what you're talking about, Daniel? If so, this is the area when you guys get done filling it out, these are all going to remain 0 until we get it and we approve it. Yeah, okay. So when you enter this in, and I'll do one real quick. I am the coordinator. Can't spell. I'm gonna make me make a lot of money. I wish. These are all made up numbers. Let's see if it works. Oh wow, I didn't mean to make me make that much. I was just trying to put 9 up. It's a bit much. So I'm saying I work 1,000 hours for my SO doing other jobs, and then I use that 1,080 hours to do my CACFP monitoring. And so out of that, it calculates that I spend 51.923% of my time doing CACFP work, and then it applies that percentage to my salary. And this would be the allowable amount that, assuming this is true numbers, that would be the amount that you could charge up to the CACFP and use our funds to pay for. But it does not mean that you're going to be reimbursed for that. It just means whatever you have left over at the end of the day, because what you guys are paid when you submit a claim, it's your meals times rate. So if you've used up all your money to pay for food, you don't even have the funds to pay for these things. But if you did, this would be in your budget and it would be approved and it would be an allowable cost. You can use our money for it. So now I've got me in there. I honestly don't know why I think we left this it's been like this before I came into this position. If you wanted to report the total institution of everybody else's salaries, you could, but ideally this number and this number would be the same like everything else on here. So I would just type in whatever this is calculated to. But these are going to be zero when you submit it, and then we'll come back as a state agency and look at these and make sure that they're reasonable amounts that you've requested in your budget, and then we'll approve them accordingly. No, I think we're going to probably send this out. Whenever we get it, we can send it to all of our participants. I think that was the plan. So one way or another, we'll get it to you. So anyway, you're going to do that on all your line items that you have charges that are related to the food program. And some of them you won't. I know I keep repeating myself. But things that we know we're going to be looking for, and we haven't really done this in the past. We've kind of just taken what you put and went with it. In some instances, we've accepted institutions reporting all zeros, which, you know, it's not done correctly because we need to know what it costs. But we know, like your military bases and all that, like you guys don't use our funds to pay for those things, but somebody pays for it. So we are going to be looking at that and making you guys report those numbers because it is regulatory that we know that. I mean, if you've gone through a review and your consultant, I mean, you know you've had to provide all those documentations, all that stuff to your consultant when we're doing a review. So it should all align. But some of those things we look for is, you know, utilities, communications, that's where you're going to put your phone and your internet, things like that. But something that many of you miss and you all should have in there. As a multi-sited institution, you have to be conducting on-site monitoring reviews. And unless you're a school system or a small little area where you can walk to where you're going and do those monitoring reviews, you have to monitor all your sites 3 times a year, non-COVID. In the normal world, you have to monitor them 3 times a year on site. So if your sites are all over the place, you're going to incur travel expenses, and those are things that you can use our money to pay for. So we're going to be looking for that so that we make sure, you know, your pre-approval visits, your monitoring visits, your follow-up, all of that's going to have, you know, you might not use our money for it, but somebody's paying for you, unless you're a really nice person, to just offer your car and your gas money to go do these visits. So we do have 2 separate things for travel. The bottom one, and that's kind of confusing, this one is solely for training. So this one up here is for your program operations team. This is your day-to-day monitoring reviews, your approval visits, what have you, or if you just need to go and do some like help out at a site or something. But if you have a formal training or workshop and you guys have to conduct training of some sort, and it doesn't be on site, but it can be. But if you have sites all over the state and you set up trainings here and there and you travel to that, that's what those are for. So you can use the money to rent a space if you need it to conduct a workshop. That's where those expenses go. Okay, we'll get it to everyone. So we will be looking to make sure you guys are doing that. I just misspoke though. This is your staff training. If you have training materials and stuff like that, or if you have specific site training, you can put the materials and stuff here, but the travel incurred about it goes up here. Does that make sense? Okay. So it doesn't mean you guys are going to have to fill out every one of these things, but you should have a good number of them that you should be reporting some kind of numbers, even if you're not using our money. And we did have it fixed to where you could put 0%, but we still want to know the dollar amount that it costs to begin with. Now, to answer your question from earlier, Daniel, where do you put your food related costs? That all goes down here. So if you have a food service company, those numbers will be reported here, and they work the same way. And we'll have to kind of have to finagle it a little bit to make how you operate work. This budget is not, it doesn't work for every type of entity. We have so many different entity types, and like I said, this budget needs help, and we hope to make it easier and better next year. But this is the area where you're going to put any of your costs that are related to food or milk, but also the people that cut your carrots and that sack the lunches. That's where they go. They don't go up here. They go down here, and you will list them out the same way. You can be cool too. Donut maker. She does, that's all you do is cook. And give her a lot of money. But so it's the same, it operates the same way. Same thing here. It's going to be all zeros until we come in and approve it. These two though, you're just going to type in a total amount. And like I said, it's just a projection. So you're going to look at last year and you're going to increase it a little bit. Any questions on where you put those types of expenses? Part C is where you're going to record your income. So this is where the financial viability part comes into play. So you tell us how much it costs you, and then you're going to tell us how you afford it. And you can, I mean, it does take into consideration what you make off our program. Yeah. It is, any of this is a guesstimate, but it should be based off of real numbers from the prior year. So that's what I would suggest. Go back, which I don't know if you guys, it's going to be hard for anyone to base anything off of last year because nothing was normal, but the one thing that I don't think everyone understands though is that your budget can be amended at any time. We don't recommend amending it all the time, but I think periodically you should look in it and see, like, you have an expected cost, or, you know, we all had our budgets approved back in October and none of us had any idea COVID was going to happen. And I can bet you that especially our schools that still operated and we utilized those waivers to do more than what we normally would have been allowed to do, I'm sure our budgets are way off. They should have really been adjusted as we go. So, but I don't think people understand that. So just know as things change, or, you know, what have you do have, say you've got some overage in money you need to spend, because just like with all your other programs, if you're on another program, and for those of you that may not know that are just on this program, to be in compliance with how much money you have to run a nonprofit program. This program is intended to be a reimbursement for the cost of the meals you're providing to these children. So you can't make a profit. And what we consider a profit is more than 3 times your month's operating expense. So if you ever find that you do have an excess and you need to buy some equipment or something like that, you can do that. You can go up here. You'll need to amend your budget. And depending on the expense and how much it is, you know, you still have to follow your regular procurement procedures. But you can use that money to do that. But it's just got to be in your budget first if you have the money to spend it that way. So anyway, down here in Part C is where you're going to report all of your income. This is where you'll put your daycare fees. This is like parent fees if they're private pay. This is where you report what you get from DHS. Medicaid funding is really just going to be our adult. Is that a fair statement? Yeah. This is where you report basically what you made last year. So it should be, that number really should match what's on your funds received. And this one should too. If, you know, well, all of these, this is where you're reporting all your federal funding. But the difference in that right here is on that funds received page, it asks for it all together. So this, and if you receive anything in addition to your daycare, if you're just a daycare Those should add up and be pretty similar to what is on the funds received page. But like I said, it is projected, so you would want to inflate it a little bit so that you have enough in the event that, inflation, everything costs more every year. So we don't expect it to be the exact numbers, but it should be close. If it's an actual grant, I'd put it in grants. Yes. Okay. You're welcome. Any more questions on the income? I don't understand your question, Shauna. I mean, your NSLP would be federal funding, and you'd want to report it here. Your CACFP money's reported here. Okay. Number 4 is your projected reimbursement. Yeah, I mean, it really is, but we always just tell you to put what last year was, and you can increase it some. But that's just a safe number, is to put at least what last year was on here. And this right here is just for new institutions. If they're first applying, they don't have a reimbursement, so we just take their rates and do the multiplication and put it there. Part D, this applies to all of you guys. So okay, let me think about it. I have to think before I say this, before I say it wrong. So you have this budget up here, and you enter all your numbers, and it doesn't matter what percentages of what you use on any of this. You down here on your food service labor, like you saw, we put in Jennifer as the cook, as a donut maker, and we put 100% of her hours as being covered by CACFP budget. And that's allowable because she truly does spend that much of her time, and all she does is CACFP. That 100% of her salary is allowable, but that doesn't mean you'll have that much money at the end of the day to pay for it. It's just if you do, you're approved for it. But in the grand scheme of things, when you get your payment every month, you'll see on your claim the 15% amount calculated. And the purpose of that is it's regulatory that you report your meals, and it does the the meals times rate, and it pays you your amount. And of that money you're paid, only 15% of that can you use to pay for your administrative costs. So you can't ever use more than 15% of all the money you ever make on this program to pay for those things. And that's the purpose of this. So it takes your total of your projected administrative budget, and then it also adds in your projected CACFP reimbursement, and it figures out what 15% of that is. And if you are over that amount, it's going to say, nope, you're not in compliance, and it will not let you submit this form. And that has been broken the last couple of years, apparently, because we had some that got through. So if you get that message, you've got to go back up here and either increase your funding or decrease your admin amount, because you can't go over that. And that's, I think, the most confusing part for folks to understand is we might approve a higher percentage. Like I said, with the donut makers, we'll say, sure, we'll pay for 100% of her salary. You can use all of our money, or our money, to pay for all of that. But it still can't go over the 15% of what you make a month or per year. Any questions on that? Okay. This last part down here just basically totals your profit loss, and we're not doing very good on this budget. We're in the hole big time because we didn't report any income. Correct me if I'm wrong, if it's in the red, it doesn't let them save it? It won't? Okay, that's what I thought. I don't approve as many of these applications as I've got all my other CACFP folks in here. My minions, yeah. And so the thing is, you're supposed to be running a nonprofit program, but we also have to make sure you're financially viable, which that's kind of a catch-22, because that's essentially saying you're supposed to break even at the end of the year. And we all know that's probably not happening. We probably know many times you've got food programs that are running in the red, but you have other means to offset that. And that's the purpose of, you've got some other kind of funding. So that's why you want to make sure you're reporting all your funding. So you're showing that, okay, yeah, we're getting this money and we're running the program, we're still in the red, but we've got these other funds to make up for it. So that's why here, if you go and you try to calculate it and it comes out in the red, it will not let you save it. So that is the purpose of that. We want you to spend everything you've got on the program and hopefully not be in the red, but if you do, have the means to be able to come up with a way to support it. Any questions? You guys are quiet. Either y'all are asleep or I'm just doing a fantastic job today. Yeah, you really should be coding all this towards CACFP. And I think that's 769. Somebody speak up from schools if I just said the wrong thing. Yeah, I think it's 769. Yeah. Hey, thanks, Shauna. I wasn't making that up. So yeah, it should be coded towards CACFP. And that's going to help you when it's time for your administrative review, because then you can just show us exactly what went towards this. And you have to show what you spent and that it supports all the meals you were paid for. And thank you. This is a hard form to explain because I feel your pain. I used to fill it out and know how difficult it is to get it right when I was on your side of the thing. Okay. Part E does not apply to anyone other than family daycare home sponsors. I think, did we have more than one family daycare home sponsor in here? We had Deep Fork. I don't want to carry on about this part because it'll blow other people's minds because it only applies to family daycare homes. And just like this part up here that I just went on and on about doesn't even apply to family daycare homes. So if you're a family daycare home, forget that 15% rule. Let that just go away. It doesn't apply to you. Okay. Did what? Yeah. Anyone technically that has anything to do with the food program should have the civil rights training. And it's really, we don't get any more guidance. USDA tells us key staff, and they will not define that for us. So we leave it up to you. If you have a person that does anything, that has anything to do with any of our programs, they have to have the civil rights training. It's quick and painless. I'd say have them do it. Going back, budget based on facilities. Yes, that's the number of facilities you serve, that's daycares, your daycare home. And this one, you guys, this one is for centers or at risk. It's however many sites or providers you have. Any other questions before I move to the next page? I will mention though, you can put in your miscellaneous funding here. I know some institutions do even say they have, like, in the event something were to happen and we couldn't pay you guys for a month. I mean, unfortunately that's happened where something's broken. If you are a school, you're painfully aware of that because that went on a lot last year. So you have to have a plan in place, even if it's like you have a line of credit with your bank or something to that effect. If it's something like that, put that kind of stuff in the notes. We need to know. Yeah, include private donations, include anything that helps you operate your program. That's only going to help you. Look, more and more financially viable, and that's what we want to see. Okay, and something too, if you guys haven't experienced this, you will. After this form is approved, and if you ever need to go back and look at something or update it, please know that if you click the Save and Continue button, it will unsubmit your form, even if you're just looking at it. I can't tell you, it happens during reviews, so be careful of that. And we're trying to make sure that our consultants know that too, because when they're in there looking at what stuff is on page 2, if they click Save and Continue, it kicks it out, and oh man, it's gonna make me fill all that out. I'm trying to go to the next page. Okay, I'm about to do what I just told you guys not to do and just answer anything. Yeah, do as I say, not as I do. Oh, we gotta say we make money. All right, we make lots of money now. Oh, Lord have mercy. What am I missing, guys? Oh, I'm sure. That's okay. I should have filled this out. I should have filled this out before we started. Now you know. I'm just trying to get to page 2 to show you guys any questions. Yeah, we don't have a donut maker anymore. Sorry, guys. We're gonna get, oh, we got there. We're on page 2 now. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of zoom out a little bit. This section A, prior to this year, was just 2 questions. And it kind of, we split it one apart and added a new one. So you'll see now that you've got some answered and some blank. Make sure you're being as explicit as possible on all of these, because this is telling us exactly how you're collecting your records and paying your people. So on this top one, some of it, this whole part down here talks about family daycare home. So if you're not family daycare home, don't worry about that. But we want to know, how are you collecting your records and how frequently are they collected? This is talking about enrollment forms, family size and income applications, things like that. How are you doing those and how are you maintaining them? This one is talking about all your, everything basically, like where are they maintained and who has access to them. I know that I mentioned that on your business maintenance page, we put, we have you put where the records are kept, but sometimes it might be different. We just allow you to put one address there, and that might be where your sponsor stuff is. But if it's different for every site, you know, let us know that, okay, at each of our sites, we'll have an office with a file cabinet that's in the top drawer. I mean, that sounds way too picky, but if it is something that will allow us to walk into any of your facilities or sites and know where the records are and help your people there know so that we can see them, that's what we need to know here. And if it's all maintained at that address on your business maintenance page and you keep it all at one central location, that's fine too. State that here as well. But we're talking all your records. And as you guys know, we should be able to have access to those at any time. And while I'm on that note, we have a new requirement with our state auditors. We're not happy about it, but we have to do it. If you were not reviewed this year, you didn't experience it, but you will either this year or next year, that we're required to maintain copies of everything we look at. So every single piece of paper we look at during a review, your consultant needs a copy of, whether it's a scanned copy or they make a copy or you make a copy. We have to have it, and the state auditors want us to keep it here. And I'm not sure what we're going to do with all of it because I'm going to have to move out of my office soon because it's a lot of documentation. So just be prepared for that. We're not thrilled about that either, but just know that's coming from above us and it's not our idea. Okay. Describe your accounting system used to collect, record, and maintain data. This is talking like, do you use QuickBooks? Do you just have an Excel spreadsheet? How do you keep up with your stuff? That's what that question's talking about. Sorry in advance. Me too. Like I finally had to move it out of my office because I couldn't even walk in there. And so right now we're in the conference room and I'm staring at giant piles in here. It's awful. It's awful. We're not happy about it either. So we apologize too. Okay, so tell us what you're using to keep your records. Some people may not have anything, formal and fancy. If you just handwrite your stuff and balance your checkbook every month, that's great. We just need to know how you do it. We tried that, Ryan. They wouldn't go for it. I'd take it over there right now if they let me. Okay. Describe your system for dispersing CACFP reimbursements to the facilities. This is a requirement that once we pay you guys. So you might have 50 sites, but we pay you. And it depends on how you operate. And many of you probably don't send individual payments to your participants or to your sites. Our family daycare homes operate that way, and maybe some of our sites do. But that's where you need to explain this, because you're required that if your sites pay for all their stuff and then they do all their meals and do all that, and then they report to you the meal counts, and then you get the money, it's regulatory that you pay them the money you get from us within 5 days that you get it from us. You have to give them that payment. But many of you probably aren't doing that. You guys are footing the bill and providing the food and all that, and it's kind of a different situation. So that's where you need to explain how you're handling the funds. When you get paid, what happens and where does it go? And now we're on the ethnic and racial breakdown, our favorite section of any application. Now, every single site has to report this, but then you also have to report it as a sponsor. So you're basically taking this top part is your total enrollment for all of your sites and broken down. So every child has an ethnicity, whether Hispanic or not, and every child also has a race. Of those, only 5. And unfortunately, USDA only likes to pick one of the 5. So have fun with that. You guys are used to it. So this is your actual enrollment. Down here, it says it's not your actual enrollment. It's going to be really large numbers because you're going to be taking all the potential participants in your area. So the easiest way to find that out, if you're not a school, contact your local school. They can help you get these numbers. You can also look it up on the census, hometown locator. You can also, the FRAC, you can look it up on FRAC, OSDE. Yes, we also have the racial ethnic report that you can find on the SDE website. So there's lots of ways to find this. It's really just reporting. We want you guys to be serving areas that need to be served, and this is just showing that there are lots of potential kiddos out there that need a meal. That's the purpose. Okay, section C. I think we added one question here, but you guys, if you weren't aware, you are now, you have to monitor your sites 3 times a year on site, and you have to use our monitoring review form or one that's equivalent to that needs to be approved by your consultant and maybe your office too, just to be safe. And like I said, everything's not normal right now because of COVID. So if you weren't already aware, you should have gotten an email from me a couple of times harassing you about waivers. And one of those waivers is the monitoring review waiver. We do have the leniency to allow you guys to be doing desk reviews and also not even have to meet that 3 per year requirement. But as a state, we're asking you guys to do your, your very best, still somehow monitor your site 3 times this next fiscal year. If you've not opted into the waiver because you didn't know about it, contact me after this training. If you've not opted into it because you don't want to, that's fine. You don't have to, but just know if you're reviewed, you will be expected to have conducted those monitoring reviews. No more than 6 months can pass in between reviews, and they have to be on site and do a meal observation. But if you've done the waiver, just know that we are still encouraging 3, but it cannot be a desk review. And what we consider a desk review is you're just having them send all their information to you and you're reviewing it. No, I have it. That's why I said after this, here's my email. If you don't already have it, email me directly. I didn't send this out in a mass email, and I didn't post it because we have so many participants that it doesn't apply to. I think it would have caused some mass confusion. So we have several waivers available, and I should go ahead and say this now, and I'll probably say it again when we talk about your site applications. If any of your sites are operating any way differently than what you normally would before COVID, we need to know about it. And if you're unsure of if what you're doing meets any of that, just send me an email and we'll work through it, because we have waivers to accommodate all these different situations that we're encountering because of COVID. And one of those, the regular monitoring form, that is in the manual. And I think it's also, and I would go show you, but I don't want to leave this page because it took us so long to get onto page 2. But it's in the manual. And I think we might also have it broken apart individually as a monitoring form in Resource Library. But if you can't locate it, just let me know. I will be glad to send it to you. But I would recommend that you use ours. And if you don't, make sure that it's got at least what ours has on it. You can add to it, but it can't have less than what we have. Okay, back to monitoring. You are required to do on-site pre-approval visits. So that's something else that's we're asking you, that is not new, but we have this new site ad form and all that, and we have a new process. So we're asking you that when you send us a site ad form, you need to also send us that pre-approval form to show us that you've done the pre-approval visit. Yes, and I recognize your name, and I do have yours. And if you haven't, if I have it, I haven't, you're approved. All you have to do is send it. But I'm still going to get back with you just so everybody knows that I'm just really behind. It's a little crazy right now. But I know I have yours, so you're good, Catherine. Okay, so when you send in your site ad form to add a new site, you should have already done the pre-approval visit and made sure the site meets all the requirements, done the training so that the people at the site and responsible have done, understand the program, and then you're going to send that form. Yes, crazy is an understatement. One other thing that we are going to be requiring, and that I know this isn't really part of your application training, but I'm going to throw it out there and we're going to talk about it. If you guys, we also have some multi-sited and at-risk training on the 23rd, or if you just need to contact me if you need help about what I'm about to tell you, you can email me. I'll come back to your question in a second so I can finish this thought. So if you've never heard of the term National Disqualified List, you all need to become familiar with it now. And that's something else that I will provide in the resource library, or if you want to contact me, I can send it to you directly. But you all, as a sponsor, should have access to the National Disqualified List and be looking up all the individuals that you have responsible for your sites to make sure that they've never done anything on any federal program that was that lacked business integrity, for lack of better words. So if they've ever been found seriously deficient and terminated from any federal program, there's one national database, you can go look that up. And if they have, those those people should not be operating your programs. It is against regulation to have those people do anything administrative or anything to do with your programs. And it really is up to the sponsor. So when you guys came on brand new, whether you knew it or not, we searched you, because as a state agency, anybody we bring on, we're required to do that. So we made sure you're not on that list, but you need to make sure your folks aren't either. So I haven't added the brand new site ad form. I'm going to update it. I was just, like I said, given a chance to do some training before I put all these new forms on there. But there is a question on that site ad form that says, have you checked the national disqualified list? And you have to say yes or no, and provide the results that show, and you'll search the person's name and it'll just say no results if they aren't on it. The monitoring form, I'm told, is in your manual, and it's page 290. And it might, you know, if we find we have a lot of you guys that are having a hard time with the NDL, because you have to go through the instructions. It's in the manual already. So if you've got your manual, or if you're looking at the one on Resource Library, the instructions on how to get to that national disqualified list is on there. You have to have an account. You have to sign up and go through all that to be able to have access to do that. So you might want to start working on that. We're not requiring it. It's not, you're not having to go back and look at everyone you have on now. I mean, it wouldn't be a terrible idea, but anyone brand new coming on, you're going to have to submit that national disqualified list search results to prove the person responsible at your site hasn't been terminated. So anyway, I kind of went off on a tangent there. Is there a link for that site for the national disqualified list? Yes, and it's in your, yeah, I'll share my email again before we leave here. In your manual, Ryan, we've added a few pages, or it might just be one, the link, but I can also email it out to everyone, and I'll post it in Resource Library, so you don't have to type out the long drawn out link to the national disqualified list. The hardest part's going to be getting an account set up. But once you get in there, it's easy. You just click on search for individuals, you type in their name, and just like with any search engine, and if you're a Facebook stalker, like, or you know, if you're used to looking people up, I'm not saying I am. No, but you know how to look people up. So sometimes less is more. I wouldn't put their first and last name, and I would put just a first name and last initial, because then you're gonna get more results to make sure you've got people that operate in your stuff that shouldn't be. You know, you want to make sure of that. 271 in your manual is where you can find the national disqualified list instructions. So as you hire new employees, that will help with CACFP things. Do we need to check that list before we hire them? If they're going, depending on, I don't know your exact type of establishment, Catherine, but if they're going to have any type of responsibility with the CACFP, yeah, you wouldn't, I mean, I wouldn't say not hire them, but I wouldn't give them any job responsibilities that had to do with this program if they were on that list. But they're going, that list is, I can't tell you what all programs, but if they've ever been disqualified from, my understanding, any federal program where they received money and they were terminated because they did something that lacked business integrity, because we can't use the F fraud word or anything like that. They've done something not right and they owe money back to the federal government, and they're on that list. We don't want them responsible. Let me go back here. On the site applications, if you're, yeah, going back, Rachel, yes, I think that would be okay. If you don't have current data, you can have it be reflective of what last year is. Do we have to check the NDL list on all providers every year and provide you with that info, or just new providers? For you, Greg, you're with a family daycare home. Once you have them on and you've checked it, if they've not gone to any other program, you know that you've not terminated them. That doesn't mean they haven't done something on some other program. It is not our requirement for you to do that annually. It just needs to be done before they're brought on. But I can't tell you that it's not a bad idea, but we don't require it. Okay. Okay, back to this. So you got to do your pre-approval visits. You got to check the NDL. You got to do all that before you bring a site on. We just want to make sure we're bringing on folks that know what they're doing and they're doing the right thing. And I think for the most part, we all are trying to do that. We just have to submit the documentation that we've done that. When you bring on a new site, you have to conduct a visit within the first 4 weeks of operation. And that's what this is talking about here. Then you also, that first visit for brand new participants, that visit doesn't count as one of your 3 a year. So you just have to do that on your brand new ones. But then after they're on, you have to do your 3 visits a year, non-COVID, all that. And you have to tell us, though, you have 2 different methods for which you may do reviews. You do 3 a year, and it's 1 announced and 2 unannounced. Or you can do a review averaging, which not many people do, but basically it's still, you will still on average do 3 reviews per the number of sites you have. But if you have situations where you feel like you have more troubled sites that need your attention, you can give more reviews to one site and less to another, as long as you don't go more than 6 months between visits for any one site, and still your average is 3 per site at the end of the year. So most people just do the 3 because it's easier to keep up with, but whatever you do, you have to make sure you are doing what you've selected, and that can be verified when you're reviewed, that that's how you're actually doing your reviews. Another requirement, it's regulatory, that your reviews have to be unpredictable. So you have to have a plan in place for that. And that's it's really kind of a vague response you're going to have here. You're going to describe how you're going to do your visits so that they don't know when you're coming on your unannounced review. So some good examples I could give, like if you're just very, like you always do, you do your claims the first week of the month, and then the second month of, or the second week of the month, you're always doing reviews. If they know the second week is when you do reviews, that's predictable. Then you need to change it up. Another example I have is like we do have some areas that are not as safe as others. And so we have instances where sponsors purposefully, if they have sites that serve late at night, they try to do those visits late at night in the summer because it's dark. It doesn't get dark until later. That's predictable. If you know that you're not going to have your 8:30 snack reviewed until July, that's predictable. So we need to have unpredictable methods of how you're going to do your reviews. Thanks, Karen. There you go. That's the link right there to go get signed up for the NDL. Thanks, Jennifer. You guys are on it. By the way, I didn't mention, I've got Lisa King in here. She is, you guys are familiar with her, Karen Davis, and then Jennifer Pryor. There are our newbies in CACFP, and we are excited to have them. Okay. Describe your recruitment policy and procedure. Explain how you're going to enlist new facilities or providers. Your procedures can't be, we're not going to take any new ones, because we've come across that. And I know it's kind of a silly question, especially for, say, you're a school system and you've got all your sites on. But truthfully, you could bring on any site as a sponsor. So if you're a school system and you've already got all your school sites on, but you have the local library that you're like, well, we see a need there, you could bring that site on. I'm not saying you will, and you maybe not want to. In the event that you